Hi there, this is Lesley again. I know that last video was horrible because of my internet connection, and I've had a few questions to clarify a few things, so I'm going to try. Bear with me. I wanted to remind you though that I showed you this long, 7-foot piece. This is just one pattern repeat. No matter how many times each individual color repeats, you have to find the pattern repeat for the whole thing to work. And you can work in any multiples of half your pattern. So half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, etc. It doesn't matter how long or short the pattern repeat is, and it doesn't matter how long or short your colors are. Because I also had, remember, these very short color runs that made an interesting pattern. Okay, today we're going to work with a very bright color with kind of medium-ish color runs. It's a little long, but hopefully it won't be too long for the purposes of this video. But I picked this because the color changes, the colors are pretty bright and obvious. So we're going to try to concentrate today on exactly how to find and fudge with your pattern. So to find your pattern, you want to start with something obvious, just because it's easy to see, not because it works. Once your pattern repeats, your pattern repeats. Whether it repeats in 24 stitches or 28 stitches or 37 stitches or that monstrous 7-foot long thing I showed you on the couch, once your pattern repeats, it repeats. You just have to find it. So find an obvious color starting point and start crocheting and go until you think you have at least 2 circuits of your repeat, which, like I said, this one's a little longer than some of the others, so this could get a little boring. And if I start singing, well, I won't start singing. How about that? So we'll just keep going and hope that we find, oops, oh look, yellow. I think we've gone through one repeat because we started at the beginning of yellow. So we'll go to till we find another yellow. Just to be sure that we've got a repeating pattern. Now, you might start working with it and it goes all bonkers, and it might be something like that camo that it looked like it repeated, but it didn't, not for a very long time. So don't get too frustrated. But, well, you should have seen the chain I had to crochet on that camo, because I had to go at least, I went 3 or 4 circuits just to be sure it was repeating. So I had a monstrous chain, but chaining doesn't take all that long, so that's not that big a deal. So here's my next yellow, and I just got my hook jammed, so I'll stop. So let's go back to the beginning, okay, and we'll see if we can figure out. You want to loop it because it makes a circuit. You want to make sure you're matching them. My connection is weak. Great, that means this is going to be fuzzy. I'm sorry, I hope it's not too bad. So we've got the green, we've got yellow, we've got the orange, we've got the pink, we've got the blue, and we've got the green, and we're back at the yellow. So it looks like we have a repeating pattern. So we've figured out that it does indeed repeat. So we can take it, undo it down to just one pattern repeat, because if it repeats on the chain, you know it's going to repeat in your pattern, your stitch pattern. See, that's what we got to find now. If it repeats, you got to find out how many stitches it's going to repeat on the stitch pattern you want to use, whether that's a linen stitch or a straight back and forth single crochet or double crochet or triple crochet or half double, or however you're doing it, you want to find out how many stitches it takes to repeat the pattern. The linen stitch is what gives you the plaid. The other stitches will simply give you pooling, you know, just groups of color that shift around. So we're at the beginning of the yellow here, we're at the beginning of the yellow here. So we want to go in 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're just going to start a linen stitch. We're just going to start it just to see how many stitches it takes to repeat the pattern in the stitch we want to use. Now, the one thing to be careful of, though, is that when you're crocheting on the chain, this first row is not most likely going to be indicative of how your stitch is going to fall, because as we know from experience, crocheting on a chain makes you do strange things, because you're fighting the chain and fighting your tension and probably fighting the cats playing with it and that sort of thing. So this is going to give you a starting point, though. You're probably going to need fewer stitches, and I'll show you what happens and how to fix that. I'm sorry, again, working through the camera, it makes it very difficult to figure out what I'm doing. My hands feel 20 feet away. This is very strange. So I'm gonna just go till I get to the beginning of the yellow, because that's where I started, was at the beginning of the yellow. Oh, that hurts. Oh, and another reason it makes it is different is because going on the chain, you're only going around one piece of yarn. Basically 1/3 of your stitch here. When you go back in the linen stitch, you're going to go around the whole chain, and I know it doesn't seem like much, but cumulatively it adds up, and it will change the length that you're going to be working with, and I will show you that in just a few minutes. So right now we're just going to the beginning of the yellow just to see where we are. And I realized I kind of glossed over some of this because last time when I did it on the last video, it happened to work perfectly, so I didn't have to show you too much about how to fudge with things. So I will show you that probably in this one, or I've got another yarn that makes a much shorter pattern. I'm going to show you how to double, and by extension, you know, triple, quadruple, whatever. Oh, look, here's the yellow finally. I feel like it's been forever. Okay, should go faster now, though, because I'm not fighting with the chain. So, beginning of the yellow, I had a little bit of green in it, so I don't want that green because I had a little bit of green at the beginning of the row, so I want to save that for the beginning of the next row. So, now this row is what will show you, because let me count these and you'll see. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 2, 4, 6, 8, 30, 2, 4, 6, 8, 42. Okay, that was awfully long. So now we're just going to go back to the beginning of the yellow again, or I should say the end of the green, because we kind of have a tail end of green on there. So just to see now more reasonably how this is going to go. Now you want to make sure you're maintaining a medium tension for yourself. Don't worry about comparing to anybody else. Whatever hook you're using, whatever yarn you're using, whatever stitch you're using, you want to be going at a medium tension for yourself so that you can later manipulate your tension in order to force your stitches to fall where you want them to. And you'll see what I mean by that as we go along too, because you will have to manipulate it a little bit, because sometimes the yarn is thick or thin, and that makes a difference. And it can really alter how things fall. Well, that's odd. That didn't come very short at all. Okay, now, usually it gets a little shorter. But now, you see where I'm right at the beginning of the yellow, but I don't really want to be there. See, I want to have that, I want to save some green. So I'm going to take that off. See, so that's actually only a couple stitches shorter. So make sure 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 2, 4, 6, 8, 30, 2, 4, 6, 8, 40. So take that out. Yep, okay. So on chain 2 and go back. Now you can't worry about this first row now because your tension was a little different. So it's not going to signify in what you're doing now. You just want to go back yet again, making sure that you're working at a nice even tension for yourself, and see if this comes out the same. Okay, the reason I'm taking off a little bit is because I want to work so that my stitches fall after each other instead of before. If you can also add a stitch or two and you'll still get a crisscross, but maybe that'll make more sense later. I don't know. I sure hope so. But each one has to move over because you're building on every other row. Since you're going back and forth with your yarn, your color pattern is going back and forth. So your pattern actually builds every other row. So what you want to look for is 2 rows down, which would be in the linen stitch like this. See, it would be the one directly under your stitch, but that's actually 2 rows down. And I'll show you how that signifies in just a minute. Okay, well, it looks like, oh, I've got it around my foot. That does not help. Okay, so looks like we're doing okay. We're a little shorter into the green here. See, we've got a little more green left on than we did before. So hopefully this will work. Now, this is where you can find out if your pattern is working. You can find out right now if it looks like it's going to work. And you know what? I said you want this to fall 1 stitch over, 1 stitch after. And you know what? It didn't. It's falling directly on top. So I need to take out yet another stitch. So, and we can do this here because this is just our fiddling piece. Once you figure out if you've got your pattern, then you can take it all out and actually do your piece. You're only going to do a few rows here, and linen works up quickly, so it's not such a heartbreak to undo it. So there's 1. Well, I'm kind of getting a middling here, aren't I? Whoops, that was too quick, and this is too late. So I'm going to loosen my tension just a bit. Try and bring that stitch back in. Now let's see where I am. So I've got, oh, I'm 2 out. You know, I don't like how that's falling. So guess what? You get to see now how one side is going to be different than the other. What I like to do in this case, when it's falling in between, is end this row without making the chain. So just directly over the single crochet before it. And then you just chain 1 and single crochet and then start into your linen stitch. Let's see if that's going to work better. Alright, now, see the orange one? Directly below, 1 over. See, my orange fell 1 after that orange. So this does look like it's going to work. So that was the, when you have an odd number of stitches, way to doing it. So one side is going to be different than the other. One side is going to have the mesh linen stitch, and the other is going to have the salvage edge linen stitch with that extra stitch there. Oh, I got a knot. Okay, now see, my first blue one fell there, 1 over from that blue one. So that's how you can already tell whether it looks like it's going to work in this row right here, which is pretty quick. But you want to go a couple more rows just to be sure you are working in your medium tension and the yarn's not going to do anything funny. So this is my mesh side. 1, 2. Now, I want the green. And then this one back is green turning into yellow. I've already got yellow here, so I'm going to tighten it up just a bit. And then if you feel like you're tightening it too much, you can take another stitch off to see if that works. And you know, I don't know why this one doesn't want to work so well, but we're close. We're close. We can just fiddle with the tension a bit. And it doesn't matter if you miss it a little bit. See, there we go. We're back on pattern here. We've got this partial purple, partial blue. So 1 over, 1 up, partial purple, partial blue. And that's, if you keep eyeballing that, when you have a color change, keep eyeballing where that color change is falling. And that'll keep you on track. Oh, wait, this was my salvage edge, so I didn't want to chain 1, I just wanted to crochet 1, now chain 1, crochet 1, and chain 1. Okay, and that's a partial green, partial yellow, right? Now you can change hook size, you know, go size, if you find you're pulling your tension tight, you can go down a hook size too. I just like to take off 1 stitch because I confuse myself very easily. I like to use this H hook for all these 4 plies. And then I don't confuse my poor little addle-pated brain. Okay, so here's the orange one. See, orange fell 1 over from the previous orange. So it looks like it's going to work. So now we just need to know how many stitches we ended up with on a row. Oops. Oh, look, I get to show you another thing to fix. Looks like I forgot to do a chain there. Now, I can go back and put a chain in between there. That's not so far. But if you're making a huge long one and you really don't want to rip all that out, just make sure you go between these legs here. So you've got one stitch here and one stitch here. But then you want to go, make sure you go between those two up front. Because if you just go straight through, you're liable to cut that in half. You don't want to do that. Make sure you go between those stitches there and between those stitches there. And it's really not going to be visible. But if it bugs you, you can rip it out. But like I said, if you're doing a really long one, like you've tripled or quadrupled or quintupled the size, and you're all the way at the end of this row, that means you're going to have to take out this whole row you've done and this whole row to get to it. You might want to just fudge it like that. And just make sure that it didn't mess up where your stitches are falling. You can tighten or loosen your tension if it did. See, so, but we're doing all right. So now you just want to know how many total stitches you got out of it. So remember, one side has the selvage edge, so you want to make sure you count this correctly. So now your spaces are going to be your odd or your even numbers. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 2, 4, 6, 8, 30, 2, 4, 6, 8, 39. So then you take all this out, because this was just your practice to get to it, because you've got all these weird things going on that you don't need. So 39. And then remember, our first row was a little bit big. It wasn't very big on this one for some reason. So when you do your first row next time, you can crochet that first row a little big, or you can grab a hook that's like 2 sizes bigger, depending on how many. Like, I was only short by like a couple stitches here. Sometimes I'm short by like 6 stitches. So if it's that many, you're going to want a hook 2 sizes bigger. But, and then, so you take all this extra foo-foo out, and you can start wherever now, because it doesn't matter. Like I said, once it repeats, it repeats. You just got to notice where it starts, but not here on the chain. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 36, 37, 38, 39. Now that was where it repeated in our stitch. Now it's not going to repeat in this chain, but you're not chaining the whole thing, so that doesn't matter. So now you want to do your chain 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4th chain from hook. And now this was just a little bit big, so I'm gonna crochet it just a little bit loose, and hope that it works. Now, if you're a little off and you can live with it, sometimes you can let that first row be just a tad off, as long as it fixes itself, in the next couple rows. If you don't mind that. If you want it to start right up perfectly, then you might have to fiddle with this a couple times until you get the idea how this particular yarn is working today, and how, because even things like humidity and your own fatigue and you know, whatever, anything can affect how your tension is going to be, how thick or thin the yarn is going to be. And really, when you're working this precisely, where you want one stitch to fall right after or before another stitch, all of that can make a big difference. It really can. So just, you know, have some patience with yourself, and if you have to start this a couple times, so be it. Linen stitch works up so quickly, and if you practice a few times on things only as wide as scarves, you know, only one pattern, or, you know, wide, then and then go to 2 patterns wide so you don't overdo it. You don't want to be pulling out that 7-foot monster on the couch after you've done like 3 or 4 rows and say, oh my goodness, it's not working after all. So you want to practice a few times on 1 pattern repeat and 2 pattern repeats, and just see if it works. Okay, so we've got this extra chain because we have an odd number of stitches. So hopefully this is going to work again this time. Oops. If it doesn't, I'll fiddle with the tension again. So remember, on this side we're just doing a salvage edge, which is no chain 1, just single crochet in that last one, and then only chain 1 to turn, and single crochet directly into that last one from the row before. So now this is where we pray that it worked, or at least worked close enough that we can just fidget with the tension and it will work. So let's see, we'll get to the other end, see where we're falling on our pattern. And we started with a pink. Okay, here comes a pink. So we started with a pink. We started with a pink here. And now this one takes, this is the regular mesh side, so this takes chain 2 and then just go right into your linen stitch. Now we're going to want our purple one to fall 1 over. So let's see if we got it. Ah, we didn't get it. Okay, so what I can do is loosen up my tension just a skosh. It's a hot day here and my hands are all sweaty, so I might be having this more tension than I realize. Okay, so I'm going to be a little off, but I'm going to loosen my tension a bit and see if I can get it to work. See, now this one isn't working so well. The other that I worked on worked perfectly. So now you get to see fiddling with the tension. I'm doing this row pretty loose. Okay, so we've got green. Look at that. See, now we're back in pattern. Look at that. We're already back in pattern. First green, first green. So it looks like I was good. I was just for some reason coming up a little tight there. So we'll go back, try to medium out the tension again. Okay, now by this row you can see that it's working or it's not working. And this is my salvage row, so I'm going to do that. and then chain 1, turn, single crochet, chain 1. So now, see, I've got these pink. So let's see how we're falling with the pink. Okay, so we want one more pink. Now, see, we got into blue a little bit, but not too much. So I'm going to call it good. I'm going to just tighten it back up a little now. See, that's what you got. You just got to keep tightening and loosening just a hair. Just a little bit to make those stitches fall exactly where you want them to fall. You are the master. This is the intentional part of intentional pooling or planned pooling. Okay, there's my first green. See, and now here's my first green on this row. See, it fell one over. See, the two rows down and one over, and that is how you get your plaid look. You just, I know when you look at this, it looks pretty iffy because that doesn't really look like much yet. But if you look at each individual stitch, okay, you got your green, one over, one up, green. Well, technically two up, but directly up. See, green, green. Okay, and if you want to look the other way, see, you gotta look the direction that the row is going. See, this row is going this way, so you want to look down below. That was the row where we kind of had to fidget a little bit, so that's okay. But see, green, green. And see, partial green, partial yellow. See, so that's working. Okay. So as long as you keep looking, it can drift a little bit, but if you keep looking at it, you will stay in pattern. Okay. Now, I wanted to show you how to double it. You know what? I'm gonna stop this video, and I'm gonna do the doubling on another video. So I hope that helped a little bit more to see exactly how to get your color to fall where you want it to fall. Happy crocheting.